The spiritual development of humanity relies on empathy. We need empathy to evolve as a species, and we can learn a lot from it.
Hare Hare Mahadeva Shambho Kashi Vishwanath Gange Hare Hare Mahadeva Shambho Kashi Vishwanath Gange.
My name is Colin, and my author name is Raven Digitalis. Most people know me as Raven. And I write books about magic and occultism, Wicca, paganism, and a lot of these concepts are blended with Eastern philosophies. Empathy is now my kind of main subject of focus in writing, and I recently released The Everyday Empath on Llewellyn, and this is a book for people who self-identify as empaths or who think they might be empaths. Esoteric empathy, which is more in the magical, Wiccan, occult, and neo-pagan genre. So it's much more of a niche book, but it's more of where my heart is at. These are my contributions to the field of empathy and metaphysics, and very happy to present those to the world and help create a little more healing. The word empathy comes from a German word that means feeling into. It's a reference to feeling as somebody else, feeling the emotions of a person, an animal, even a place. So it's become almost a household word, which is really neat because I think it's essential that we recognize that we are emotional beings, and our emotional state and how we connect with others is just as important as meeting our physical needs. Empathy differs from sympathy in that sympathy means, I feel for you. I feel for somebody. Empathy is like I'm feeling as somebody. I'm absorbing these emotions. Empathy is biological. It's also spiritual because everything in reality is energy. It's all energetic. Emotional energy is one of those planes. An empath is somebody who feels emotion from outside sources to a much higher degree than normal on an everyday basis. They will interact with somebody and then they'll feel like them. It'll be an emotional exchange, and that's called emotional contagion in scientific fields, and it operates through the mirror neurons. We do mirror each other, so empathy can be seen as a mirror or a sponge effect. People who are extremely empathic will just go through life mirroring others and going with the flow of what's presented to them, which makes empaths highly persuadable, and that's something that we need to guard against. Self-awareness and balance are things that I really promote when talking about empathy, because that brings the power back to the self. It's not really selfish, but it's necessary if we want to serve other people, which empaths and highly empathic people are designed to do by nature. We have to serve ourselves first and be balanced, and then we can accurately heal others. Empaths in general are compassionate and loving and understanding and caring towards others, but that doesn't mean that we always are. Empaths will slip back into apathy or even antipathy. One thing that breaks my heart is to see highly empathic people overreact and swing the pendulum to the side of apathy and cynicism or nihilism because it's just too hard to deal with external emotions, or when they want to just hermit all the time. I understand how that feels, to just want to hermit and not see anybody, not deal with anybody, not interact. Here we are absorbing emotions all around us, becoming overwhelmed. Like, what do I do with this? Why is it so heavy? And it really feels like a curse in that way. And if a person doesn't get out of that, hell yeah, they're cursing themselves. If a person does the work and is inspired to create healing in themselves and in others and realizes the gifts of empathy evolutionarily, socially, spiritually, they can start to see it not as a curse but as a gift. People who experience high levels of empathy, I think, are natural healers. We're here to help heal others. I think empaths have a life purpose of service, and sometimes that can take so many years to hone and understand and accept and learn how we fit in to the puzzle. And that can be really hard because empaths and highly empathic and sensitive people are very prone to depression. People who have highly empathic experiences of exchanging emotional energy with others are actually tapping into something that is quite spiritual. I really don't see a difference between emotion and magic, emotion and spirituality, emotion and creativity. These things are all interwoven together. The more people who embrace empathy as a positive trait, the greater the world will change and the better kind of place the world will be. Empathy is a binding evolutionary force that encourages the progression of any species. Science and emotion and spirituality, which I think are inseparable anyway, were separated very heavily. I think that was something that created very limiting mentalities. A lot of prejudice and hatred came from that because we have religion or spirituality on one hand, and then we have science and physics and physical study on the other. But we're not just physical beings. We're constantly experiencing consciousness and interacting. Realities that dance, like the dance of Lord Shiva in Hinduism, or Shiva Shakti, the god and goddess. Reality is this big dance. It's biological, it's seasonal, it's social, it's everything. And empathy is a part of the great design of life, the great dance of life. I love that Carl Jung explored the concept of conscious interaction as being inseparable from nature. Because here we have physics and the natural world in this perfect order, perfect chaos, but the emotional, social, psychological field, consciousness, is just as equally a part of the Big Bang, evolutionarily, as anything physical. We are nature. We are walking and breathing nature. Usually if a person thinks about empathy and thinks about its opposite, they're going to think that it's apathy, which makes sense because being apathetic means just not caring, not giving a shit about anything, whereas empathy is like total investment and total care and wanting to care about everything. So it's natural to think that apathy is the opposite. Really, at least from my research, antipathy is the opposite, which is more nihilistic and dark and judgmental and cruel. That's the opposite of empathy. This expression of apathy that we find so often is actually just a need to be involved and belong. Sometimes you'll find a lot of empathy among members of hate groups that hate the other. But among their members, there's camaraderie and safety and empathy, but they just can't empathize for X, Y, or Z. And so, even among the worst of people, there is still some empathic experience. It's just misplaced, because it shouldn't be toward one particular group or another. It should be for all. With men especially, there's this view of emotion as feminine, again, equating emotion with femininity, with weakness, and these things that are totally inaccurate and long ingrained in so many cultures. I think that this is really changing, and there are some cultures where their poetic ancient myths show masculine emotion, especially as a sign of strength, because it means a person cares. We can choose to relate to other people and experiences at the same time as knowing oneself. So I know that crying isn't a sign of weakness. I know that feeling weak and vulnerable isn't a sign of being lesser than, or less of a man, or that being queer is being less of a man. These are just long ingrained things in human society that we're now rising above. And we're also rising above the whole masculine and feminine division. We see a lot of fluidity happening more in the West now because there's this increase in understanding between different types of people and this understanding of diversity across the world. Empathy is on the rise. Empathy is in. It's always going to be in because we need it, and we're starting to realize the value of it as a species. A person can go on and on about love and light and kindness and all these things, but realistically, we have to put that into real-world action. It really is a war between light and dark, just like it's spoken about in the Bhagavad Gita. There's the internal war of the self between the dark self, the asuric self, and the light self, the Brahmanic self. And so this internal war is being fought, and as above, so below, as within, so without. We see that reflected in the world around us, and we must influence. Empathy has a ripple effect. So the more people who embrace empathy and the personal healing that it takes in order to really embrace and express empathy, that ripple just spreads. In the mystical experience, people merge with spirit, God, divinity, however they see it. And that's an emotional exchange. It's overwhelming to feel, hey, I am nature. Hey, this deity or whatnot, or the universe, is me. I'm that. And mysticism brings you to the greater picture, the bigger picture. And that's where empathy is. It's seeing the greater picture, seeing the connective bond between everyone and everything. So I think that's where we're headed as a species, is to that unity, that place of unity instead of that place of divisiveness. From my perspective, emotions and spirituality are inseparable. This view of the self and the other, but empathy encourages the view of the self as the other. We are each other. Everybody is each other. We're all reflections of God experiencing itself. Many Eastern cultures talk about enlightenment. In reality, enlightenment is a journey. It's not a destination. I know there's a lot of mythologies, especially in Buddhist traditions, where enlightenment is the pinnacle. And it's good to have that as a goal. I think empathy helps propel a person toward that, because having universal love and holding on to that at all costs can propel a person toward greater love for everyone and everything, and all cultures and all people. And that's an ideal. Human culture is on a journey of understanding our place in the world. Nobody has the answers. No religion or culture has the answers. Maybe we all have little bits and pieces. And the thing that binds together every positive spiritual path is empathy. It's love. It's just love for others. And that's going to bring humanity, and is bringing humanity, to a new level of consciousness and unity.